All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to welcome everybody today. It's Friday, and we've got a great program that we want to share with you. Today we have Russ Gollowin, our elder law attorney, who is going to share with us some discussion on some estate planning tips and information. And so we're excited to get into that. As everybody here knows, we got to go through a little bit of disclosure information first. And so I'll do that here right now and share that with you. Again, remember from 2 to 2:30, we're going to have an open discussion with Russ. And I've been finding that if you've got some questions that you can throw out there during the discussion, I'll try to get those in depending on how much time we have. We may have to wait for the open Q&A session from 2:30 to 3. But feel free to send those in either way. Try to put them in the Q&A box instead of the chat so I can check those off as I go. Also, here's the disclosure. So I'm going to let that sit here for a few seconds, 30 seconds or so. So feel free to review that, and I'll be with you in a moment. And thanks for letting us go through that. And so we'll keep moving here. Again, special notes, what is COPEC? We're a 501c3 organization to provide additional information to the community. No cost, no marketing or any of that sort. So we appreciate your coming on and joining us so we can give you some information. The financial wellness portal is real important for us to get this information out to you. We're excited to have that and appreciate the chance to share that with you. Programming the technology, if there's any problems, try to stay on. We'll try to get connected as soon as possible. But in general, we tend to, we haven't had any problems so far, so that it's been going well. Holidays, know that we'll be off on holidays and like the day, Christmas Eve and day after Thanksgiving. And please share this with others. We have a great group of speakers, as you can see on the right side there, and we're looking to share that with as many people as possible. Portal, basically we have the daily show with calendars going out. So if you have a particular day that you find that you like, feel free to look at those schedules and get one that, put it on your calendar. If it's, for example, if LinkedIn next Wednesday is something you want to listen into, make sure you put it on your calendar and you can follow up. Otherwise, join us every day. We're happy to have you. Also coming up in September, we're going to have some retirement decisions workshops. They're going to be in person down at the Fawcett Center. We may provide additional webinars. We're not sure about that. Excuse me. Not sure about that yet. We're working on that, but in person is what we've traditionally done, and we're still able to do that with some social distancing. That'll require registration, but for anybody that's interested in checking those out, go to the website. The middle tile at the top is the information on it, and registration is required. Then the next one, this is the Financial Wellness Friday. I actually did one of these at 11 o'clock, talking a little bit about financial planning. Next week, we have Medicare Basics, and this will be more of a lecture series. And so feel free to tune in for those as well if you find a topic you like. There is no registration required for these. Just tune in if you have the time. If you are part of a company or an organization or department, and you want to share this with your organization, do that. But if you also need a custom program, a specific one at a time, or in a way that's unique to your group, we're happy to accommodate that and do what we can to provide that education. And then the last is if you have personal questions that's outside the scope of these programs and you really need to have a one-on-one consultation with somebody who can answer your questions and guide you in the direction that you might need, regardless of the topic, go ahead and set a calendar invite. We'll set that up and we'll make sure that we help you out as best we can. So with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and introduce Russ. Anyway, so here we are, and Russ, thanks for joining us. For some reason, I'm not able to see the video. I'm sure it's me and my technology skill set, but glad to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and also what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, again, my name is Russ Gallowin, and I'm an attorney. I practice mostly with wills, trusts, estates, Medicaid, and veterans planning. And my clients range from brand new 18-year-olds that want to get the basics covered to people that are well into their 90s. They might be in a nursing home trying to get everything wrapped up, maybe protect some of their savings from long-term care costs. So it's a wide range of things that are related to the general world of estate planning. And today, the topic is called a membership program, but I think the better way to describe what I'm talking about is the things you should be thinking about after you've created a will or maybe a trust, and why you shouldn't really just put those documents on the shelf and forget about them.
Sure, and actually, can we go into that a little bit? Because that is one of the questions I've always had is, when we deal with financial planning, a lot of times we try to remind everybody that it's real important that even though you do a great job getting up to speed with your plan of action, if you will, it's really critical that you stay on top of it. And can you go through that a little bit? Your experience with people they get a nice review done, but then they forget about it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's really common, and I think it's natural because for a lot of us, we procrastinate, we put off meeting with an attorney or trying to get a will or trust done. And so when we finally get through it and force ourselves to do it, once it's done, we feel like we've really accomplished a lot, which is true. It is a great and important accomplishment. But the tendency then is to just say it's done and really maybe never look at it again. But I encourage the people on the call and really the loved ones of the people on the call to not look at it that way. Look at it as something that should be reviewed periodically. And I made a list here of a few reasons why that makes sense. And number one, the last week's topic, last Friday for me, was talking about beneficiary designations. And those are really important because most guys that if you name a beneficiary on an account, like a life insurance policy, that controls over the will. So if I made a beneficiary designation 10 years ago and I named my mom as the beneficiary, well, if I create a will that says everything goes to my wife and then my kids, if she's not living, that does not control that life insurance policy. That life insurance is going to go to my mom regardless of what my will says. So the number one reason to review your estate plan periodically is just making absolutely sure those beneficiary designations are current and the way you want it. Number two, going along with that very reason, I think we should all make sure we have written verification of who those beneficiaries are. So in other words, a letter from the life insurance company or a printout from the insurance company that says your primary beneficiary is your spouse and your contingent is your children, for example. But the point being, I want my clients and the people I speak to have that paper in hand, because believe it or not, sometimes these big companies lose that paperwork, and then when you pass away, there's no beneficiary and the account has to go through probate, which is time consuming and can be costly. Right. So those are two reasons. Let me just mention a couple more. You might purchase a new house. You might purchase a new car. You might make a new bank account that you didn't own when you created your estate plan. And maybe you had updated all the beneficiaries when you created your documents, but in the years following that, you might have new things and you forget that You have an opportunity to name beneficiaries to avoid probate. And you're really only going to catch those if you have a full review, either done by yourself or with you and your attorney. So I highly encourage that. And then, of course, the law might change, or you might have changes in your family. Someone might be born, someone might die, marriage, divorce, or you know what? Sometimes people just change their mind as far as who they want to get what. And that's always, of course, a good reason to take a look at your will or your trust and make any changes you might need to make. So even though estate planning has some contingencies built in to cover scenarios, it's not just set it and forget it. You have to take a look at least every once in a while to make sure everything's set the way you want it to go.
What is, if somebody were to just simplify the core documents that somebody would need to review for, that initial estate plan, what is typically included in that? And I understand that each one it can evolve dramatically from there, but at least like maybe, some of the major topics like living will or, those types of things, healthcare directives. But, and then on top of that, one of the questions I had, and I get this from time to time questions, is, somebody might be in the hospital and they actually might sign a healthcare directive. And you've got that over here. And then you have beneficiaries over here. And then you have, everything is done piecemeal if even everything is even done. How difficult is it for you to have a good plan when you don't look at everything in one house all together? Because they, like you said, the beneficiaries, you think you have it covered, but you didn't realize you did a trust over here that, and then years before you might have had a will that doesn't talk about the trust, and they all really need to be done together, don't they?
Well, I think it's best to have it all done together, or if you already created documents in the past, have them reviewed as a whole and potentially update everything as a whole. And I'll give you an example that actually just came up this morning. A married couple, they lived in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and they moved to Ohio within the last 5 years or so. And the daughters contacted me because now mom and dad are both incapacitated. They can't really understand legal documents anymore. They definitely can't sign new documents. But apparently, somebody found some forms to make an Ohio power of attorney. And so mom and dad signed them maybe a year or so ago. And typically what your documents do is they say, this document revokes my old documents. And so this actually is really unfortunate that they sign these Ohio documents on their own, because this new form revokes their California powers of attorney, which were really well done and would allow them to do some Medicaid planning and protect some of the family assets because they're now both needing to go to a nursing home. But the Ohio ones are really poor, but those documents revoked the old one. So we're in a situation where we lost the ability to use the proper documents because it wasn't really a review, it was just a piecemeal new power of attorney, kind of like you were saying, Jay. So those are just really tough situations, but I think your question is valid. You probably should look at this as having an entire review instead of just plug and play different things, because it's possible that they might conflict and sometimes cause trouble. So I think that answers your first question. I think your second question was sort of, what are the basic documents that most people should have? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, just when you talk about this, this binder and you got it done and you put it on the shelf, in general, what does that include? And I know that, we're going to have you on quite often. We're going to go dig deep into a lot of these sections. But just maybe remind everybody, what are the 4, 5, 6 things that would fall into the categories of make sure you at least look at this and have something in place?
Right. Well, there's always a big question, should I have a will or should I have a trust? And I'll get into that at some other point. But the basics, really what every adult should have is a simple will, at least, a financial power of attorney. That's so if you're incapacitated, nobody needs to go to probate court and ask to be a guardian, because that takes court costs, probably attorney fees, physicians' exams, everything's public record. It just takes a lot of time and money. So will, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney names who will make your medical decisions for you. You might have a living will that says, if I'm permanently unconscious, I don't want to be on life support. I want the machines taken away, for example. And then another important one is a HIPAA medical authorization. You sign these at your doctor's office probably about every year, and it tells them who they can tell about your medical condition. But the one I want people to sign is for any medical provider. Most often to be there just in case you're on vacation in Florida, you're in an accident, they take you to the hospital in Florida. You've never been there before, so you've never authorized them to give your medical information to someone else. So they could be barred from obtaining it. So this authorization would say, look, you can tell my wife, you can tell my kids, you can tell my sister or my best friend how I'm doing, and they'll be able to get information directly from the hospital. Those are the main ones. Again, some people are really complex, some people are pretty simple, but those are probably the most important 5 documents for every adult.
Yeah, and I know we're definitely going to be getting into a lot of these different areas, which is like, we talk about, you mentioned like a financial power of attorney versus a healthcare power of attorney, and you may not have the same person who is the executor of your will, your estate, the power of attorney for healthcare, and the financial power of attorney. They all may be 3 different people, right?
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes they're all the same, but they definitely do not have to be, and they often are not.
Yeah, I mean, you may have one of your children maybe local for estate issues. The other one, might be really aware on dealing with hospitals and HIPAA issues, and they may work in a hospital themselves. You might want them to be the healthcare power of attorney just because they know how to navigate that whole system better than maybe the other siblings. And then maybe lastly, you have one of your family members who is very aware of how the financial industry works. Maybe they're a banker or a financial expert or something like that, and they may be great for the financial powers to make sure that runs smooth as well. So you don't have to have it locked into one person. I'm not saying it's good or bad. You gotta think that through, of course, the pros and cons, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So somebody, one of the things that, you really kind of have to focus on this head coach idea. I always think of this in my world because we really deal with the financial more than the legal. And, we have our clients work with an elder law attorney to make sure that they do that. But one of the things that I found, whether it's investments or insurance or even legal to a point, you really kind of have to have one center point of knowledge. Let's call it a head coach, right? You need a head coach that understands, if it's investments, that they understand what your 401k is doing, what your banks are doing. Doesn't mean they're managing it. Doesn't mean they're telling what to do. It just means they understand what they're doing, because one move over here may affect what your decision-making process might be over here. And I would imagine in the legal world, it is critical to have a single source understand and see everything, because you may have a will, but maybe a trust might be more important. Maybe these beneficiaries, maybe you're tied. Isn't it true that doesn't mean you have to have it all with one maybe, but it's real important for one person to look at everything and see how they truly work together or how they conflict with each other, quite honestly. Because you mentioned earlier, you might have a will that might say one thing, but all of your designations and ownership is completely opposite. Or you might have a trust and you didn't name it properly in the will. Am I wrong on that? You really have to have that focus from a top-down, comprehensive view of how they all work together.
Yeah, I mean, on a couple levels of, I think, what you're getting at, Jay. Number one, it's good for the attorney specifically to, number one, have all the information. And what I mean by that is, seems like a lot of times, at least the general expectation of the public coming in is, I need a will, and you're just looking for a document that fulfills whatever the legal requirements for a will are. And I'm happy to do that for people. But my perspective is, they don't really want a will. They want to make sure things work when they die. And a will alone is not going to get that done, because like we just said, if I have a will and it says everything goes to my best friend, Bob, but I have all these old life insurance policies and my beneficiaries are somebody entirely different, that will is not going to do anything for me when I die, because it's not going to cover anything that has those incorrect beneficiary designations. So I, as the attorney, I want to, and I really need to know all of the accounts and help people look through that to make sure everything's pointing exactly where it should go. So that's number one, what I want to see. Number two, it's very nice if I have a connection to that financial advisor or to that CPA. And if they can all get into communication together and everyone see the whole picture, then you've drastically reduced the possibility of things falling through the cracks. But number two, you have different people who have slightly different viewpoints being able to look at it from various perspectives, which also I think helps get a better result. And not everybody wants that kind of setup, but it can be very, very helpful, I think, for most people.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned, so I've seen the way that you show some of these with individuals on many people, like you said, many people want it to work the way they want it to work, but they haven't really thought through this many times. And so they don't know what they need until they see, okay, this is going to go this direction over here. This is going to go over to this person. And are you aware that this is how the laws of this would work? And all of a sudden you're like going, oh my gosh, I wasn't aware how these things are going to flow through. For example, let's say somebody has 2 kids and they give extra money to one kid while they're alive because they wanted to start a business and they had the money and they gave it to them. And then they said, okay, in my will, I want to reduce the assets by $50,000 so that the other, child would get $50,000 extra, but they weren't aware that the money wasn't even going by the will. It was going by other beneficiaries or a trust. And they were looking at it going, oh my gosh, I wasn't aware that this whole thing is how these things are flowing, because it seems to make sense when you don't lay it out. But then when you lay it out and understand how the rules work, all of a sudden it becomes clear and it's different. I would say 80% of the time it's different than what people think initially when they walk in.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll give you 2 examples. Number one, kind of going to what you said, a lot of times people, they have these pretty sophisticated wills where they list, I want this account to go to this person and this to go to that person. And they just don't realize that because they own that account jointly with one of their kids, for example, those accounts are going to that joint owner. It's not going according to their will at all. And that's very, very common. That happens sometimes when people go into the bank after they've done their planning, and the banker says, hey, why don't you just name your daughter as a joint owner so she can help you out with paying bills? And that just totally changes the estate plan and can cause big trouble. So be aware of that. That goes along the line of the beneficiary designations as well. Unfortunately, that's happening more and more as kind of people get older and need assistance. So one thing you can do is make sure you review your estate plan. I like to do it about every 3 years with my clients. Of course, if somebody gets divorced or married or passes away, you might want to do it more often, but a full review every 3 years. Sometimes the meeting is, hey, how you doing? Anything changed? No, everybody's doing great. And I say, well, there's no big changes in the law, but we should probably update your financial power of attorney because banks don't like to accept them when they get too old. So we might just redo that. Even though everything's the same, just update it, make sure it's fresh and new. That's always a good idea. And sometimes people like to make more changes than others, but I think the 3 year is kind of a good period of time to take a look.
3 years or a life event.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And like I just said, some people are more interested in keeping things updated, and so they might want to meet every year. I know with financial planning, people have even more regular meetings than that. With the attorney, people are afraid that if they come in to meet or if they want to make a change, it's going to cost a lot of money. So sometimes there are these ideas of membership programs. Some attorneys have them, some don't. That's where people might pay an annual fee or a monthly fee. And by doing that, they know if they want to make a change to a beneficiary, or if they need to update someone's phone number, or they need to do this, or they need to do that, they can just come in and they won't be charged for it. It's kind of like, the car wash. When I didn't have the membership at a certain car wash near me, I'd drive by and I'd say, I don't want to pay $10 for a car wash, so I wouldn't wash the car. But then once I started paying the monthly $30 or whatever it is, then just whenever I drive by, I get it, and it doesn't bother me because I already know it's taken care of. That sort of thing, because you don't want to be in a situation where you are afraid to call the attorney, get a bill, and then things don't work out the way you want it to. And I have a sense that this is what happened. I got a call last week from a husband. His wife passed away, and unfortunately, she did not update her will or her estate plan after she got married to him. And so her will left everything to her sister when she was single, and she set all of her accounts to be payable on death to her sister. So unfortunately, nothing is going to go through probate now that she's passed away. And probate provides the spouse at least a little something. But because she did such a good job with her estate planning to avoid probate, he's not going to get anything because she didn't update it after she got married.
Right.
And so that's just really tough. It's a bad outcome because she did such a good job, but just fell short of updating it with that life event.
She did a good job in one area, but she didn't do a good job looking at the whole picture.
Well, she did a perfect job initially, but she just didn't update it after that life event. So her perfection ends up causing a poor result because it just was not refreshed once her life changed. Yeah.
Well, excellent discussion. We're over a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And for everybody online. We try to close it out here to make sure that our recordings, because we're going to create a library eventually, and try to keep those right around a half an hour. For those of you that have questions, I see some have already come in. We're going to get to those in just a moment after we close out this initial discussion. Russ, do you have anything to wrap this up with? Any overview that you'd like to say real quickly, and then we'll get to the questions.
Yeah, I mean, just really quickly, I think the key takeaway is when you get your will, your trust plan done, that's a wonderful accomplishment. You're well on your way to have everything taken care of. Just remember to review it with a life change, or if you change your mind. There's no magic rule, but maybe every 3 years or so, make sure your beneficiary designations are correct and updated. And you probably want to update your financial power of attorney every 3 to 5 years. I think if you remember those things, you'll be in pretty good shape.
Excellent. Thanks again. Again, if anybody has any questions, they can go to the calendar on the COPEC website. Obviously, there's some information there. I'm on the bottom left there, Jay Linder. You can reach out to me or Russ directly. We're happy to help out any way we can. And so we're going to go ahead and close out this first half hour and then get to some questions here. So Russ, if you're willing to stick around for a while, we'll get into that as well. So thanks everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and close it out, and we'll see everybody next week. So hold on a moment. We'll get right to the questions.